Welcome to Black Man Lab. I am Marty Monaghan, and we are live on Monday, April 12th, here in the Black Man Lab. Want to welcome everybody. We're going to have a great show tonight. We're going to be talking about Black men as caregivers. Before I get started, I want to, number one, introduce our founder and generally my co-host here. But he's got a whole bunch going on, so I want him to jump in real quick and give a quick introduction, and then we can get started. Mawali.
Hey man, how y'all doing? I don't know if y'all just heard that, but
We did.
yeah, I'm y'all. I am just finishing up a really important obligation to our community, and just giving thanks that we were able to participate in different process to hopefully change the dynamic of the law as we know it. We're just real grateful for today. Obviously, this Black men and caregiver space is something entirely different. I had to experience it with my father, who is Big Mel Davis, 83 years old, now suffering from dementia. The strongest man I've ever known. To watch him be craned from his bed to a wheelchair has been very humbling for me. So I'm very grateful for those brothers who are here willing to share that experience and what they're having to go through, but also the gift of being able to be a caregiver. So I don't want to frame it in a negative, but the opportunity that we have. So we're grateful. Black Man Lab was created for these kinds of conversations, a safe and sacred space for Black men. Brother Michael has been in the space physically, and it's good to see him now virtually. So without any further ado, we're going to bring, we do two things. We stable ourselves and ground ourselves with our breathing, and then we invite the ancestors. So I think we will have Brother Jarrett do both of those today, and I look forward to seeing you all on the other side. Brother Marty, you really need to be on the panel, but I know you'll share your experiences and what you've done. And I'll just say this, one of the proudest moments that I've had as Marty's friend is to see how he's taking care of his father. And it's been inspiring to see him and his brother Michael take care of their father, who we all love very, very, very much. And so this hits very close to home. So thank y'all for being able to share and bear your souls to our community of the Black Man Lab. Brother Jarrett.
Good evening and welcome to Black Man Lab. I want to just ask everyone to just kind of relax for a couple minutes and a couple seconds and just kind of breathe. Breathe into your nose real deep, abdominal breathing into your stomach, and then breathe out through your mouth. So everybody just take a minute and let's breathe in. And then breathe out. Let's do a couple more of those. Relax, let your day go. Breathe in. Breathe in all of that positivity. And breathe out. Breathe out all of that negativity. Let's do just one more. Deep breathe, abdominal breathing through the nose. Breathe in. And breathe out. We love to center ourselves here at Black Man Lab. Before you do anything, we like to get centered. And we also like to bring in our ancestors. Our ancestors are so significant to us. They came before us. They gave us the wisdom, the building blocks of which we live today. They gave us the science of how to survival, Ashe. They gave us the great science of great civilization. You know, the origins of man come from us. The brothers here on this call right now, they actually come from us, Ashe. The great ancient Kemites and Nubians, we all come from them, Ashe. We come from those great African civilizations of West Africa, Mali, Songhai, and Ghana. We give great praise and thanks to those civilizations, Ashe.
Ashe.
We give great praise and thanks to those ancestors that were able to survive the Middle Passage and was able to survive enslavement and colonialism. We just say Ashe to them, Ashe.
Ashe.
And we give great praise and thanks to those great ancestors that have led us, from the Malcolm X's to the Ida B. Wells to the Marcus Garveys, to the Mama Moseses, to the Fannie Lou Hamers, to the Martin Luther Kings. We give great praise and thanks. We say thank you and Ashe to them, Ashe.
Ashe. And
then we give great praise and thanks to those 10,000 ancestors in your own bloodline that made you. You are here, and you're here for a purpose and a reason. And you're helping us to have some direction from your own bloodline. So we thank your own bloodline for bringing you here. So think of them and think of all of these ancestors as we put them in our hearts and mind for about 2 or 3 seconds. And then everybody raise your fist. And on 3, we say Ashe 3 times. 1, 2, 3.
Ashe.
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 Ashe. Thank you, brothers.
Man, thank you, Brother Jared. Appreciate you doing all of that. Normally you're just doing some of that, but this week you did all of that.
I mean, you know, I guess that was spirit on me. So,
yes, sir. But we need it. We need it, and we know that none of this work that we do, none of the words that come out of our mouth, none of our actions would be if it wasn't for all those that came before us. So thank you for that. And it's imperative that we know, especially with tonight's topic, as we talk about being a caregiver for people that are close to ancestry, right? It's important that we acknowledge them. And likewise, it's important that we are centered and ready to take in this information that we are going to have tonight. So without further ado, I want us to have an intro of our panelists tonight and kind of what your names are and what you do in this space as we talk about caregiving. So Brother Michael Wright, I'll start with you. Brother Wright has been in the Black Man Lab space when we were all together back, wow, over a year ago now. Jeez, it's crazy.
It is crazy.
Isn't it? But we've managed to keep this going and get our energy going the same way that we had it in that same live space. So, Brother Wright, we appreciate you being here. So give an introduction of yourself.
Well, I'm Michael Wright for my job. I'm a partner in a engineering firm, but more important than that, I'm a father, a brother, friend, and dealt with not too long ago a parent that went from being vibrant and functional until an accident caused her to need constant care, which she unfortunately succumbed and became an ancestor. But my brother and I shared and sister-in-law shared in caring for her long distance. I'm from Philadelphia originally. She stayed up in New Jersey, and so we were back and forth for about a 4-month period, just going in as a rotation to take care of her. And so, when Muali and Steve and I were talking, I was really heightened to be part of this conversation. And so I appreciate the invitation and
through. So thank you again for being here. We look forward to you further sharing your experiences through that process. Because I think that the interesting thing about, as we talk about this process of caregiving, there's so many different angles of it. But then also, you don't know about it until you actually go through it, right? And that's the piece that I hope that, especially with our younger folks, because nowadays we're seeing a lot of younger people that are in a position of caring for their parents, that in some cases I've seen parents my age that are in need of care. So
if I could add one more thing, Marty.
Sure.
Because you brought up a good point, and that's why I want to just add this. Stephen and I, Stephen Lewis is a friend of mine, 15 or 16 years. And Steve met the milestone of half a century and said to me, man, you just dropped the ball on me. And I was saying, well, what do you mean? He said, you never really, as a mentor, as a friend, as a big brother, you never really told me about the things that I would encounter as I moved towards the second half of my life. And, the medical things procedures that we have to go through when we hit our 40s and our 50s. And then also, the responsibilities of our parents who we supported, now we are in, or who supported us, and now we're in the position where we have to support them. You never told me about that kind of stuff. And that stuck with me, and I had a conversation with Mawali about it, and was, not surprised, but humbled by the fact that there's so many others. And I think we owe it to ourselves to share with not only our peers, but also maybe the younger brothers that hear us talking. Will see that there is some things that they need to be cognizant of. So thank you again, Marty.
Yeah, and to that point, when we think about when we were younger, we, as boneheaded as we could be when we were younger, your folks might have said, no, don't do that, or you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But it was, I had a conversation with one of our other, me and Miley's other best friends, Larry Stewart, had a stroke, same age as us, and winds up having this massive stroke. And I'm at the hospital, and I'm sitting in the waiting room with his mom, who's like another one of my mothers. And so she was just sitting there kind of holding my hand, and I looked at her just in a moment to kind of make her chuckle. I said, Mom, y'all never told us about this dirty little secret about how heavy life gets at middle age. Because we're at the middle age. You got to deal with, you have children, you got to deal with them. You got to deal with, if you're employed, you got to deal with work, whatever that looks like. You got to deal with, your parents are now aging. And then you have to deal with if you have a love relationship. And then last on the list is you. You got to deal with your own health. So, as things change. So that's why I think it's so important that we share this information tonight. So we'll get into it. We'll go try to do as deep a dive as we can. With that, Stephen, how about you, brother?
Yeah, so thank you for having me this evening. I run an organization called the Forum for Theological Exploration, and our work is really about trying to help the next generation explore their purpose, their passion, and how they are called to make a difference in the world. And I come to this conversation this evening as a caretaker for my 72-year-old mother who had a fall in October in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that became like a domino effect of my brother and I having to come in and kind of figure out next steps, moved her to Atlanta before the end of the year, and it's been just a sequence of touch and go between hospital, assisted living, to rehab, to nursing facilities, and thinking about Medicaid and Medicare and all the legalities that come around, in addition to familial and emotional taxation that comes with, care for a loved one, and that grief and gratitude go hand in hand as you kind of walk this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, when you talk about that journey and all those things that you just mentioned, Brother Stephen, it's that unknown, right? I mildly kind of touched on it with one. He touched on it me right now, being a caregiver for my father. But before all of that, I've been in the healthcare industry, specifically senior healthcare now for about 15 years, in some form or fashion, whether it was home health, hospice, or something along those lines. So I have an intrinsic knowledge of what Medicare and Medicaid and all those different kinds of insurances and things that are available to seniors looks like. But the average person doesn't, right? And you don't have a clue when, and I'm sure you probably have experienced this, when you hit this kind of crossroads of senior health care where you need all these services, it's such a blind spot for us as to where to go. And again, I want you guys to speak. I can speak to it too, because again, it's what I've done professionally for a long time, but I want you all to speak to it from an actual, hands-on and having to deal with it. Heck, I've been having to deal with it with my parents, and they know their son has been in healthcare for a long time. So I can imagine, what other people go through. So put a pin in that and make sure that we're gonna touch on that. Brother Levi.
Okay, hi brothers, how you doing?
Doing great, brother.
Okay, my name is Levi, and Michael, I won't say that you're from Philadelphia. My wife is from Philly, also. Yeah, and then what? Okay, my name is Levi. And I am a adult gerontology nurse practitioner, and I work in a black-owned practice.
All right.
And we see a lot of patients in a minority. We see patients with insurance. We see some that are not with that don't have insurance. And the reason why I am in this healthcare field, I've been here now almost 40 years. I started when I was in the military back in the 70s when I was in the Navy. I'm also a Navy Vietnam veteran too, as well. When I started with healthcare, because years ago, my grandfather was one of the members of the Tuskegee syphilis study. And then when I saw what he went through in that study, and I saw what the government paid him for that study for 40 years, $140. I figured then, hey, it's time for us to find someone to adjust it for our Black people, and then to be an advocate for us. And for the last 40 years, I have been an advocate for all us, especially the minority, because there are so many programs out there that we are not even aware of. And then there are programs out there that we miss, and then it causes our health, and then it could also cause our lives. So then as a nurse practitioner, I am constantly pushing my patient, especially my minority patient, my men especially, to follow up with health care, because there are things out there like the silent killer in hypertension, prostate cancer, that we're not even aware of. Yeah, so then that's why I'm here.
Awesome. And we look forward to your perspective, because you're going to be able to speak to it from, the healthcare provider side of things, which, quite honestly, from my experience, there's been a lot of misses from that side, that there are, particularly for our communities, where information is not shared, or it's overlooked, or it's just, bypassed, versus in other communities that I've seen and worked in, where it's an abundance of information, and abundance of different services provided that should be provided for everybody, because everybody is eligible for it. So, real quick, before I'm going to hand over to Jared to ask a question, but just wanted to make one point. One quick question for you guys that I'm sure you all have experienced in different ways. When it comes to the services has everybody on this panel, for those that you provided care for, did everybody on this panel deal with Medicare or private insurance, or a combination of somewhere in between? And Michael, I'll start with you. You're on mute, Mike.
You know, on for my mother's, it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
She and my father were part of insurances that were great from cradle to grave. Mm. But there were some things that kind of fell in between into that Medicare realm, as far as her therapies and things like that. The difficulty that we had was the amount of money that she had made in her lifetime, and he had continued to make, made the insurance companies try to step back, even though they were obligated, try to step back away from their responsibilities. And a lot of it was for the ancillary care, the medical, she was in critical care when she was first in the accident. And, you know, she was, to just kind of explain her, she was at 72, you would have looked at her and said, maybe 60, 62. And she was driving a small car that was T-boned by a big old car. And her age rushed to catch up with her. And so she was in critical care in a coma for about 2 months, medically induced. And then when she came out, she was in intensive care for another 2 months. And during that period, the insurance company starts to step away from any kind of therapies or life therapies, life skills that they try to get you into after. By the time she was ready for that, the insurance was saying, you know, you need to expend all of your resources before we'll contribute anymore. So it was a difficult thing, and it was a little bit of both. Yeah.
And Brother Stephen, how about you?
I deal with both of them.
Oh.
Yes, both of them.
And the reason I'm asking that is because, because a lot of times we have these Medicare Advantages and these different kinds of associated insurances with Medicare. And a lot of times, I don't want to smirch anybody, but they wind up limiting the care or services that people can get. Medicare, what I've told people throughout my career now in terms of healthcare is, don't let anybody touch your Medicare. Don't let anybody get you into one of these Medicare Advantages or whatever. Don't touch it, because Medicare ultimately 95% of the time is going to cover whatever services are needed, or if that's home health, if that's medical equipment, medical supplies, if that's hospice. There's a litany of things that Medicare will cover. And that's what you've paid for all your life anyway. So don't touch it. But what happens is people switch over to these Medicare Advantages or these other kinds of things that people, you all have gotten the calls, I get them all the time now, where people are calling trying to switch you out of those services, and you wind up paying more to get less. So my advice to everybody, don't touch your Medicare if you have it. And Levi, maybe you can touch on that a little bit as well. I see you nodding your head.
Well, let me just say this. I think you're right in most cases. I think it does depend. And I think if you worked a career, you know, in private pay, and then you get into Medicare, you know, that's the natural kind of progression. In my mom's case, you know, she had a bipolar 1 diagnosis for most of her adult life. Mm-hmm. And when she went over into Medicare, I mean, I'm just telling you, man, it's a racket. So mm-hmm. all your brothers out there, like, y'all need to know, y'all gotta like get educated on the game, right? Because it's a racket. Because, you know, in her particular case, she fell into a donut. So, you know, you had to get like Medicaid A, B, C, and D. Mm-hmm. And she had this period where she was taking this medication that was $1,000 a pill before it mm-hmm. went on generic. And Medicaid wasn't covered. So like, it, you know, you get to the summer and then there was like a 3-month period where she was in this donut. So mm-hmm. she had to take out, you know, mm-hmm. A personal loan or take out something from the credit union and that type of thing. And so my brother switched over to Medicaid Advantage because what it would do was cover for the whole year. And so that was really a strategy for the purposes of getting coverage for that medicine that Part D wouldn't cover because the medication was so costly. Now, that's probably more of an anomaly than I think, you know, would in general sense, but I think you're right. Staying on Medicare is a way to go. But when you have your loved ones that are in these kind of certain situations, it becomes a cash flow issue that you're trying to get.
Right. And you're saying, so she was on Medicare probably before she was that Medicare eligible because she had the bipolar situation, right? Mm-hmm. So that's, yeah, I get it. You're right. I can see how that would have happened that way because the donut is real. And that's actually even real with, you know, when people are older as well, and on your regular Medicare, but there's ways to work around the donut as well. It's just that, again, that's information that we don't know.
And this is what the brothers need to know. That's why I told Mike, I said, man, y'all brothers be holding out. Yeah. You know, you can't wait till you get in a situation where you're having to deal with these things. Like, brothers need to have these conversations that matter. Particularly, you know, what the old saying is that, you know, once adult, twice a child. Like, I mean, you can't wait till your parents get in the situation and then go to school. Like, we need to be in school before this actually happened. But most of us don't even care until we actually have to care about being educated and hipped onto this thing.
That's absolutely true. And you know, when we were younger, we think nothing about it, right? You think nothing about these days coming. And now when the days come, you don't have the information. And, you know, I've been doing it for a while. So my very close friends, when stuff occurs now, most of the time know they can reach out to me to find out information. And the gig is, it's all there. We just don't know where to go, you know? So we'll talk about that more too. Brother Levi, were you going to say something that's related to Medicare?
Yes, like, Brother Stephen, like, on all medications, there is an assistance program. And see, like, we were not aware of that. So then on all medications that cost a lot of money, you know, like, you can easily, like, call the company and then, like, apply for the assistance program. It happens all the time. Like, I mean, I see it happen, you know, like, every day. But I see that people of color, we're not using that program. But I see everybody else is like using the program, and then they are making their lives like a whole lot better and a whole lot easier. There is I have one patient who's on medication that costs about $20,000 per bottle, and then she goes through 3 bottles per week. And then like she went on the assistant program, and then the assistant program pays for the whole thing every time. All she has to pay is like $110 for every month. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, there are ways around it. It's just that, you know, we have to go out there and like look at the assistant program on all medicine. There's an assistant program on all medicine. You just have to call the company. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah. I mean, one of the challenges I think with caring for your loved ones is they will hold out independency as long as they can, unless they're in a situation like, you know, in Mike's mother's case where, you know, she was in an accident. But, you know, the case of my mother, you know, like she's going to be independent until she can be it no longer. And she probably should have been like engaged in these types of services long before, before we're here now. And so part of the challenge, Brother Levi, I was like, look, I don't need y'all managing my affairs. I'm managing myself. Now this is talking to a person, who's bipolar and who has early stages of dementia. But for the most part, can talk and communicate with folks like it's not a thing. And so by the time I get into her financial situation, trying to manage, I mean, it's like a whirling devilish, through all her stuff that I got to kind of work through, where, trying to figure out these things about these assistant programs on it. Like, it's just a whole new world than myself and my family who's on a private pay type of insurance. Mm-hmm. I don't have to think about all these other different little pieces that then are like pieces of a larger puzzle.
Yeah. And that's the overwhelming piece of caregiving, is that there's so many pieces to the puzzle, right? So you got to deal with medication. You got to deal with if there's some equipment needs. You got to deal with doctor's appointments. You got to deal with therapies that may be coming in the house, whether that's home care, home health, hospice. You got to deal with all these different things, and nobody has the education on it. Right? You're learning about it as you go.
And then you have the battle that, there is that battle that our seniors, our loved ones, are fighting for their independence.
Sure.
And, in my mother-in-law's case, I used to see these little things about the medic alert and all of that, mm-hmm. and really didn't give it much thought. I said, well, it's a routine, it's a scam, Tasha, my wife's mother, had a stroke a couple of years ago. Rehab back to maybe about 95%. But continued kind of the lifestyle that brought her to the first one. Mm-hmm. But it's strange to have, Medicaid got her one of the little bracelets because she wants to be independent, and you respect that as much as they can. And our daughter went just one day, set it up, said, hey, you got this thing? It's free. It contacts, emergency or whatever. So they set it up one day, and the same day they set it up, that evening, she had another stroke and had the wherewithal to press the thing. And so I'm saying the hard measure is, fighting against their intent to be independent. And if that's going to be the case, because some of them can be within reason independent, there's some other mechanisms out there that can help them deal with their immediate need, and then also kind of help them with that transitioning in to a little more dependence. And I think that we don't talk about, Steve made me think about that. We have that rites of passage that we give each other when we're like in our teens moving into our 20s. You wear a condom. Don't drink and drive. All the things that we did as young men as a rites of passage. But really, we need another rites of passage as we move from middle age into, our own shady side of life, right? Mm. And I think that these kind of conversations help that happen.
Brother Michael and everyone bring up some great information and insight. I've taken care of my mother for over the past 10 years. She's going to be 83 this year. My stepfather passed away in 2013, and I got a divorce around 2010. Not too long after, it was like, you need to come back home. I need help with your stepfather, because I can't do it by myself, per my mother. Because, dementia patients suffer, or with some, he was, at night, they like to be up all night. And so you got to lock the doors, put away knives, put away the keys. And this is a strong man that I looked up to in the strength. And I think the question that I'm leading up to, a part of the question is, what, as the caregiver, what are your emotional needs along with your needs as far as information? Because for me, that transition was very difficult, because you're looking at a person that has always been intact and on top of everything that you go to for knowledge and wisdom for the most part. And now you're grappling with the denial. Like I became king of denial for a minute, so and trying to relate to what was actually going on and what my own, what I needed to do in order to transition to the reality of what was going on with them. So I guess it's a two-part question, and it's still for the caregiver. What has been your need emotionally, I guess, and on this road and track? And then what type of information was critical for you on this path as well? I dealt with VA information because my stepfather and father were vets of the Korean War. And so there are many benefits there. And so what are there benefits in your county for seniors that they'll take care of all kind of bills, and, you got to give them every piece of morsel of information about yourself, but, which, my mom doesn't want to do. But in any case, just tell me about the internal aspect about yourselves, what you've gone through emotionally, what your need has been, and what information was so critical, through this journey.
I'm going to jump in and add.
Absolutely. I think everybody on this call is that person.
Because I have a kind of a twofold answer in terms of the emotional piece. Again, I've been working in senior care for a long time. Maybe 8-10 years ago now, I can't even think. But my grandmother lived with my mom and dad, and she lived till she was 95. And it got to wear them out as them being, because they were, obviously seniors themselves. So it was wearing them out in terms of care. So I said, Mom, Dad, let me help deal with Graham. And so I kind of jumped in and helped to deal with, all the care that she needed through that, just because I knew how to navigate it. But as it got to the end, I really, in my mind, I thought that I could handle it just from kind of that I had worked in that space, you know what I mean? That I'd be able to work through it. But I think the emotional part of it for me was that it had ended, like I'd gone through all this care and given all this care, and then it ended when she passed. And I was wondering if I had, did everything that I could do in terms of being present with her rather than being a caregiver. Do you know what I mean? Like I was showing love through caring for her, but was I doing all the things that I would have normally done with my grandmother that I, always did with her, and playing cards, all those kind of things. So that was that. Now, circle to now, dealing with my dad, who has been going through a tough period again, was very healthy prior to last August, and it's got some crazy rare condition now that we're God willing, will still work through, but it requires pretty much 24 hours care. Now I'm handling that differently than what I did with my grandmother when I've been with him down in Florida, which is I'm very present. and that in itself has a lot of emotion. And I think that it helps. Fortunately, it's helped me, like Miley's been dealing with his dad, so we could have these conversations, kind of, maybe on the phone crying, but letting it go, being able to let it go. And I think that one of the things that I'll say, and then I'll be quiet, is that there's caregiving groups out there that are available. And I've been a part of them in the past because I've helped put them together. But it's essential in being able to dig into your own, self-care and being in these organizations, being part of these organizations, because, and I'm sure you guys can speak to it as well, it wears you out, right? Where you're kind of not stable from a mental standpoint, as well as it affects you physically, having to be the full-time caregiver for somebody. That emotional stress will stress out the rest of your body.
Absolutely.
And I'll be quiet on that and let y'all go with that.
Okay, my wife and I, we were caregivers to her mother, who passed away at age 95, like last year, up in Philadelphia. Wow. She had Alzheimer's, and it was very hard. We were constantly traveling back from Atlanta to Philadelphia, back and forth, to take care of her, and then she stayed in and out of the hospital because of the Alzheimer's and the asthma. Yeah, we lived, both places. So we ended up getting what's known as palliative care. So then palliative care came in, and then they took over for like a month. They came in and they gave us a break. So then they took over for 8 months, and then that was a big help for us. We were able then to focus on our own selves then and our own health, all that for that period. And then after palliative care left, we came back in, then we took over, then we took over again for another month. And then we kept going back and forth between palliative care and then us doing the work out, ourselves. But if it was not for the palliative care, though, I tell you, it would have been very hard for us to, manage. Because she stayed in the hospital, and then with Alzheimer's, she constantly kept falling, and then it's just hard. It's just hard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. For me, to go to Jared's question, the emotional part for me was, we come up with this conditioning that we don't warehouse or let anybody else take care of our elderly. Mm. And so I think until you go through the progression of seeing somebody get to the point where you just can't, you don't know what the next thing is, but you're dealing constantly with, no, I don't want to put them under the care of someone else. And then in my mom's case, she had Alzheimer's. It just came on really bad, to where she didn't even know who. She knew she liked me, but she really didn't know who I was, or my brother was, or my sister-in-law was. And so that part is hard because, like you said, Marty, you want to be present. But it's saddening because you're present with somebody who really, they almost don't know that you're there. And so I think the platooning with my brother and my sister-in-law allowed, like Levi said, allowed us to kind of re-energize ourselves. But still, it was going back to a situation where you were like, did we do everything that was possible to offset this dementia? Dementia is still people, they're healthy people that get it to the extreme. And so you're always second guessing. But part of it is getting our people to understand that you can care for your loved one and they still be in a facility that can take care of their medical needs and the things that they need daily that you're just not trained to do. And I think getting past that is a hard struggle.
Yeah. And I think, Mike, I think that the key to that is, and I've seen this, is that when it comes to that side of it, like somebody having to be in a facility or you getting care in the home, whatever that looks like, is that your piece of that is being able to vet those places and hold them, those places and people, and hold them accountable, right? If you're, your loved one's in a nursing home or assisted living facility, you have all the rights in the world. You still have all the rights to, as the caregiver of that person, to say, hey, I want this to look like this, or I don't like the way you're treating my mother, my father, whoever. And then likewise, when somebody's coming in the home, if you are uncomfortable with that person that's coming in the home and how they're treating your loved one, you have the right to contact that company and say, hey, this isn't for me. I want this person, give me somebody else. And then if that person isn't it either, give me somebody else, or a different company.
Marty, you bring up a good point. I want Stephen to answer the question too, Brother Lewis. When we had to make that decision, Brother Michael, for my Brother Wright, from my stepfather, from the VA to drop him off at the nursing home, they dropped him off at the wrong place without taking him inside of the place. Or he was lost for an entire day because he's just walking around the city of Atlanta. And we were on the news and everything, saying, what occurred and what happened. Luckily, and this happened twice, when you talk about, angels, this happened twice where he was walking around Atlanta because he just walked out the house one day, and some woman each time saw his look, and knew that he suffered from dementia, and drove him home. Now, one thing he still was clear about, even though he lost his truck at the airport twice, he would always knew how to get home. And so it was with that, lucky mercy that things like that occurred. So, Brother Lewis, I was trying to, how would you answer?
Yeah, can you just repeat the question again? It was a
what
question.
The internal, as the caregiver, what was your own emotional need, and also what information was very beneficial to you?
Yeah. So I would say, in terms of my emotional need, I didn't really know at the moment. I think I was just so much kind of like in the moment of trying to make stuff happen or whatever. But when I was able to kind of sit in the sea of my emotions and let them kind of wash ashore, I mean, there was a lot of grief. When you think about your parent and who they are and who they were, and now to see them where they might be in that moment or whatever, there's a grieving in that, and you don't really know, like, man, I should have spent more time, or I wish I would have done this and that and the other. So I think there's a lot of that going on for me. I think the other piece for me too was there was a cloud of sadness, maybe in the degree depression, in the sense of like, it seemed like when I moved here to Atlanta, things got worse. And I just kept kind of second guessing myself, like, man, should I have kept her, in North Carolina? Because I hear that, as you move patients, particularly when they have early stages of dementia, those moves can be really bad. And then there was a part of me that was rage because, I had her in a hospital, then she went into a long-term facility situation, and there were times where I had to get in my car, drive down to the facility, knock on the door. This is all in the midst of COVID, which makes it even more difficult to visit facilities and hospitals, say, hey, this is where your loved one's going, etc. And I had to talk to the director of nursing, and we sat out in the parking lot for 45 minutes, and I told myself, look, I'm just trying to keep my mom from not dying in a, in a facility. And I'm asking you, if you're in my situations, I want you to think about your elder, your loved one. Like, what would you do if you were in my situation? So there was a range of emotions that I think I felt, and what I needed, I think, was I think some assurance that I have what I need in order to get through this and to make the best decision for my loved one, and to know that at the end of the day that I've done my best. I've done what I could, and there's no need of second guessing, because I've taken all the information, I've consulted with my family, and I've made the best decision. And that, all of us at some point will deteriorate in health. And that's a part of life. And that's hard, because we live in a society that suggests that, that we will always be superhero and sheroes in the eyes of our kinfolks and the next generation, that type of thing. But the fact of the matter is that even our superheroes and our parents do retire, and they get worn out, and life has a way of wearing us out, and that's all part of the cycle of life. So I think that's what I would say I needed emotionally. And then I would just say information that was most helpful for me was, I was in Charlotte, and I just wanted to be home from Christmas. I mean, my brother came down for 2 weeks, and we took care of my mom, and I'm telling you, I was worn out. I said, I don't think, I said, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do this for like much longer. Like, man, I got to get this thing resolved. And, my brother had to go back to work. And so he went back to Maryland, and I was like, whew, I was worn out. Like every morning, man, I'm up by 5:30, by 7 o'clock to get her down or whatever. I was done. And so what I found most helpful for me was that there's a whole network of people that do like elder care consulting and placement. Yeah, the big national things like Place of Moms and all that type of thing, that can we call those folks, and a couple other folks, but these kind of regional, local networks where people actually know facilities, have relationships with folks that can help you navigate and understand the difference between Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare Advantage, those kind of things, and to know what types of facilities you might need based off of your loved ones, like that was invaluable. The only downside of that is that there's not enough brothers and sisters in that network of work, consulting and providing resources to us in our community. But that was invaluable kind of information. The other piece of this that I found invaluable was that, your insurance runs about 20, your loved one's insurance runs about 20 days of care. Then it moves into 100 days where you move into a copay situation. And then beyond that, you got to figure out, hey, is it going private care, private paid, or, you got to figure out something else or whatever if you have your loved one in the facility, which is my particular case. And then I learned this whole thing about long-term care financing, and learning that there's 3 types of kind of Medicaid, versus Medicare. And there's a whole kind of elder care elder care legal services that kind of help out in that situation. Again, not enough brothers and sisters in that area of work. But then I kind of like, man, there's a whole kind of like financial planning around this particular piece. And I was just like, it's just a whole new world. And recognizing that other communities been gaming the system, using these resources, and figuring out how to attend to their loved ones and manage their financial assets in a way that at least I didn't have any clue about. And so those 2 networks of resources were just critical to me, Jared, when I think about the kind of planning for as a caregiver for my mother.
And brothers, and Marty, you're going to answer this too as well. But what management systems have y'all put into play? I have to, go to all doctor's appointments, and of course, get documentation from the doctor's appointment, see, what's going on, unless it's just a regular visit, Also, when we go to the grocery store, as opposed to, we're not going to go every day, so, so you're trying to manage, their life and your life, so what type of management systems have y'all put into play, as you cared for your parents?
Well, I'll jump real quick. I'm fortunate in that both my parents, although my mom is turning 80 this year, my dad is 85, although they're elderly, they've been very healthy until my dad this past year. So they've always kind of been able to manage one another and then keep me and my brother in the loop. If there was anything, maybe I think 6 or 7 years ago, I'm off on my dates, but my dad had a massive heart attack out the blue. Again, been very healthy. He was in the yard. Wound up having a heart attack, and recovered from that. Had open heart surgery, whatever. Recovered from that. Has been doing fine since then. And then this new disease thing occurred. So as it progressed, because originally it just started out as something very small, and then it progressed. It became clear that my brother and I needed to stay in the loop. So fortunately, my mom is very healthy. So she had been able to get him to the hospital or get him to the doctors whenever his doctor's appointments. Again, this is all during COVID, so it makes it even more goofy. So she communicated very well with my brother and I. But then as things started, I could tell the eye thing was very recognizable to me. Because my mom's mom, my grandmother, when she went through what she went through, I saw that same and heard that same voice that my mom had. She was very worn out. So then it became really all hands on deck. So I spent a month down in Florida. They're down in Florida now. I spent the month living with them just to help care for my dad. And then that gave me more, my eyes on everything. It's a full-time, situation. But in terms of management systems, I'm able to, look at all of his medical information, the doctor's appointments. Everything was, for the most part, there were only a couple of his, he had about 5 of them, a couple of them that would allow like myself to come in, or only have the patient in. Others we did virtual. He'd be in the doctor's office and I'm on, my phone looking at it, via FaceTime or whatever. So I think that those things have helped, to be very hands-on in terms of systems you utilize. And then also knowing the other crazy thing is knowing the medications. And I'm sure everybody here is involved with that. You got to know all these different pills. Then if they change one pill, does that affect another pill? And so you got to be kind of on top of all that stuff too. So again, I'm fortunate that my mom, is able to help considerably with that, but she communicates with my brother and I. So that's where we're at with it. Mike, how about you? Or Levi, were you going to say something? Go
ahead. Jared, there's a program out there that pays caregivers. So like if you're a caregiver who is taking care of one of your family, there's a program out there that will pay you for that.
All right, what's that program?
I have it at my desk because I have a lot of my patient family members signed up for the program, and they get paid. I think it's $75 a week, which is which isn't much, but it does help. and they pay you, because you are a caregiver, and it's very easy for to get on too. I have the information at my desk, but I give it to Joe Barker, and then he can share it with you.
That'd be good, and then we can put it on the website.
Yeah.
And also, before we keep moving, because we're pushing against time here, but I want to make sure everybody shares their information. At the end, I'm going to also give some information that Mark, if you could put in the chat, so that we just put it out there as well. But anyway, Brother Mike, how about you?
I was pretty fortunate in that, my mother never really had a lot of medications, and so with her it wasn't like that. Mm-hmm. With my mother-in-law though, with both my wife and I working, and then our kids are grown and they're working, we were kind of left to kind of manage the things that you were talking about. And this is a little bit before COVID, Marty, where we would go to the doctor's appointments. And, the thing that always bothered me is when I was there, when she was in attendance, they would have the doctors would go do their rounds on Tuesdays and Thursdays or something like that, where they go to the bed, and they would never look at her and talk. They would talk to me, and I kept always having to say, she understands what you're saying. Yeah. Talk to her. But if I would go and my wife couldn't go because it was her mother, I would be recording on my iPhone everything that they were saying, what the next step was, what the milestones and the benchmarks about her progress, and how she was, if she was on track with her rehab and those kinds of things. And then, vice versa. If I couldn't go over, we would make arrangements to do that. And so, the management was really just us using our time a little bit better, and then, trying to be on top of medications and therapies and so forth. Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Thank you, Michael. Brother Stephen, how about you?
I'll just say very quickly. I think it all depends on if your loved one has a partner. In your case, Marty.
Yeah.
And sounds like Gerard is, well, I don't know. Gerard,
my stepfather passed in 2013, so it's
okay. So
yeah,
okay.
Me and my mother, yeah.
Yeah. So if they have a loved one, if they have a partner or a spouse or whatever, then the management is a whole lot easier. If it's just them and you're the caregiver, it's a lot more challenging. And I would say, coupled with that, COVID makes it extremely more difficult to do a lot of things, because usually you can't go in with your loved ones and that type of thing, but they make particular kind of exceptions. And I would say on top of that, it's complex in the degree whether or not your loved one is ambulant, which means to say that they're able to walk versus they need assistance with a walk, or they need a 1 or 2 person kind of assist type of thing. So what I found for myself was that my mom's insurance, had, where folks would come and give you a ride. They would pick you up, take you to where you need to go. Cases where I was able to go to the doctor with her, I would. When I wasn't, she could call me and the doctor would talk to me, those kind of things. So that kind of management of the visits, that's kind of how, in terms of the medication, it's hard to do that from afar. When she was with me, I, of course, can manage it. And then if she was in an assistant or some other type of facility, of course, they have kind of medication management, that type of thing. And then thirdly, I would say in terms of like food and that type of thing, particularly with COVID, and I think increasingly with delivery services, Instacart and those kind of things, I used those before my mom moved to Atlanta. And that was a way in which we kind of managed the kind of food pieces of it. And then I would just say financially, she put me on her bank accounts. I kind of manage your finances, bill pays, and those kind of things. But that the whole financial management is a whole nother thing. Like if you're not, you need to be talking to your loved one about their living will, their advanced health directives, and you need to talk to them about make sure you have a power of attorney, because if their health goes down and you don't have a power of attorney, then it just makes things just much more difficult in order to manage the financial aspect of livelihood.
Absolutely, and that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Is that is so essential, because if something occurs where they're not able to communicate for one reason or another, it's just such a purgatory type of a place for them to be and for you to be, and to have to try to go through that as a pain in the butt. So those are, again, all of this is tough conversation, right? And nobody really, especially when you're dealing with, people that have, they're still very functional in a lot of cases, and have a level of pride still that they want to, maintain themselves. Really tough conversations to have, but they're needed.
Marty, to jump in, and while we're talking about, being caregivers, the things that Steve just brought up are important for each of us. Mm-hmm. Regardless of age. Those are the kinds of things when our grandparents and all were close to the end and said, yeah, my things are all in order. Well, their things were all in order. But we get so caught up sometimes in taking care of everybody else that we neglect the business, because this caregiving thing, generational, sooner or later, to some degree. And the things that Steve talked about, the will, power of attorney, the living will, what are your provisions about, if you're in an accident and it's those kind of things that you can't make decisions for yourself. We need to have those in order too. And that makes this conversation even more important.
And the advanced healthcare directives. And the thing is that even if you get all those things done, somebody needs to know where they are.
Yep.
Because a lot of people get to a point where they get sick and ill, and then you don't even know where those things are.
Yep.
And the other thing that I would say too is that for us who are financially fortunate, we need to be thinking about long-term care insurance.
Yep.
That's a whole nother conversation, but those are the things that we need to be thinking about in addition to on this whole kind of financial legal aspect, not just for our loved ones, but also for ourselves.
Yeah, there's a booklet that is available. It's called 5 Wishes. And 5 Wishes, it can stand in the space of kind of a living will. You can put what your wishes are in the booklet itself, put what your wishes are in it, and you sign it, and it can be notarized or whatever. It can stand in the place of a living will. Usually most places that deal with senior care or organizations that deal with senior care have those available, or can order them for you. It's called 5 Wishes. Fellas, we are up against the clock, and I just want to make sure that we touch on a couple of things before we close out. There's different kinds of care that are out there, right? Outside of what we do as caregivers, there's different services that are out there. Brother Levi touched on some, which I'm looking forward to you sharing what you have, Brother Levi. But when we talk about home care services, and I just want to get quick definitions for these things so people know. Home care services are somebody is coming in the home helping to clean and cook, or do something just along, nothing clinical. They come in the house and they're helping on that level. There's home health care that is actually clinical. And what home health care is supposed to be is to help somebody to rehab at home, right? In some form or fashion, whether that's physical rehab, occupational, whatever, different kinds of rehabs that are out, speech rehab. that are out there. That's through home health. There's also another level of care called, and Brother Levi touched on it a bit, palliative care. Palliative care is care that's going to help deal with pain or discomfort while somebody is still getting care that is curative, meaning still doing something to try to make them better. Palliative care is also dealing with the pain of that. Limited in the services of what palliative care generally does, but it is a service that's available out there in addition to whatever else. Next level of care will be hospice care. Hospice care is, of course, end-of-life care designed for just making somebody comfortable. It does not, it's supposed to be for the expectation of 6 months or less, but that does not necessarily mean that somebody's going to be, nobody knows what people's expiration time is. My God, man upstairs himself. So there's been people that have been under hospice care that have been on, for over 3 years. But being able to get those services are in service at wherever home is. It can be in somebody's home, whether it's at a nursing home, whether it's at an assisted living facility, senior care facility, whatever. That's what hospice does. So those are, and that's just a quick explanation because, again, these are things that we don't know, right? I had a very close friend of mine whose father was a veteran, and it just happened that I found out that he was at a hospital that I serviced and was looking at going on to hospice care. And he didn't know anything about it. He didn't know what to do. And so I was like, hey, man, we wound up talking. So he's like, that's your dad? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, bro, okay, so let's talk through what you need to do. And it wound up what was going to be a very bad situation because they were sending him to a facility that was not the best, let's say. We wound up getting him home, comfortable, and, he's able to have Thanksgiving with his family and transition in the most beautiful way possible. And literally was on the phone thanking me beforehand, the dad was. So there's these services that are out there. We just need to know how to get to them. And I'd say one of the best things that you can do is wherever you're at, whatever city you're in, there's generally a Department of Senior Services for that town that you're in. Contact them. And there's usually a case manager or a social worker that knows of all these different services. When you tell specifically of what you're looking for, hey, I need some extra care for my mother at home. Hey, I need to be able to get meals for my mother at home. I need to be able to get her a ride to wherever. Don't know from a health standpoint if she's able to be able to get to the hospital all the time. Is it possible to get care in the home? They'll have answers for you. Likewise, when we talk about different caregiver groups, find out about them. Those are great places to get information as well because those other people in these caregiver groups are experiencing the same things that you may have not experienced as of yet. So just wanted to make sure that we had anything else that anybody wanted to add to that as far as different services and things like that are out there that people need to know of. Okay. All right.
Steve, I don't want to volunteer you up, but can you talk a little bit about the legal expertise that you found out about, the legal element that was helpful for you?
Yeah, but before I do that, I would just say, Marty, it sounds like Brother Jelks has sitting on a wealth of knowledge. And if there's a way to kind of codify what's in his head and what's in his kind of 40 years of experience, yes, man, that would be such a gift and a treasure trove to our community. Yeah. Because I think, there's a lot that you probably are sitting on and, you haven't even thought of, but that's in your head and in your experience or whatever that we need that. We need that codified somewhere, if not in some type of service where, people can actually pay for or find a way to kind of get that additional information. So, Marty, I would say that, we should find a way to continue to kind of tap Brother Jelks for the wisdom of knowledge that he has, as well as what you're doing in your field.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Brother Levi, if you, everything that you can possibly share, we appreciate it. Anything that you all have in terms of websites or social media that you know about, feel free to drop it in the chat here. Or, if you want to reach out, like Brother Jelks, you reach out to Joe and let him know. We want to have it on our website and just have it available so that go ahead.
So to Mike's question, I would just say, very, very quickly, I use a guy here locally, Senior Care Authority, and he doesn't get paid by me. He gets paid by these facilities. He has a number of relationships with these different facilities. And then, we'll go with you in terms of helping you figure out, does your loved one need to be in assisted living? Do they need to be in, skilled nursing? Okay, that's a whole nother thing, assisted living, senior living, assisted living, memory care, and then skilled nursing, long-term skilled nursing, and those kind of things. So that's a whole nother kind of area of work. And, help me kind of navigate that. And he gets paid by the service. So it's a free service to you in terms of additional knowledge. And then I was telling Mike that through this particular network, I found out that there was attorneys that can help you with, in my particular case, I was trying to, I needed long-term Medicaid, but Medicaid, you can only make so much money. And so there's a whole kind of financial planning piece of that, and worked with an attorney who is an elder care attorney who helps with kind of planning with your kind of family assets. You hear about, if you need to go to Medicaid, like how you need to get the assets out of your loved one's name 5-7 years ahead of time or whatever. So there's a whole kind of financial planning piece around this to prepare for the kind of that you need. And so you can look up kind of elder care attorneys, and they can help you with that, and also help you in the ways in which you manage the assets and do the kind of financial planning in the event you need to move from Medicare to Medicaid. I mean, you can have both of those things, particularly if you're doing kind of long-term care, skilled nursing kinds of needs that your loved one might need if you have to put them in a facility.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So we need to add that to it too. Add that to the pot, man, of the stuff that we have to do. Brothers, we are up against the clock, and we close out every week the same way. Sister Anjiri Algani, she was the one of the elders of Cobra, and she closed out every meeting with the organization in Cobra with a ritual that she did called a link in the chain. When we are together at the YMCA, what we would do every week is when we closed out, we all locked arms. So I'm going to ask everybody to lock arms like this. And then just repeat after me. I'm a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
I'm a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
We are links in this chain.
We are links in this chain.
And we won't break here.
And we won't break here.
Ashe. Thank you all. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all's insight and being open with the topic tonight. Inclusive of you, Brother Jared. I didn't do Jared justice on the front end. Jared is one of the Black Man Lab board members and integral in what we do here every week. So, Jared, you sharing your experiences as well, I truly appreciate that. Brother Levi, thank you for your experiences and being able to share that. Brother Michael, As always, brother, we appreciate your support of the Black Man Lab. Thank you. Brother Stephen, you are now part of the Black Man Lab. And we expect to see you when we get back in person and we're all in the same space, which is and Brother Michael will tell you, it's an energy that you can't explain.
Yeah.
We expect you to be there. Thank you all. Love you.
You see.
Peace, brother.